Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this event. It is part of a series of webinars by the Nahrein network based at University College London, Chatham House. It's a funded project by the Arts and Humanities Research Council as part of the Global Challenge Research Fund. Our session, titled Historic Centers and Cultural Continuity in Iraq, will consist of 3 speakers followed by a discussion. I'm your chair for the session, which will last for about 2 hours. My name is Dr. Sana Murrani. I am Associate Professor in Spatial Practice and Architecture at the University of Plymouth here in the UK. Before we start, there are a couple of housekeeping points that I would like to mention. First, please come in and mute yourself. This event is being recorded. And second point is that we are going to welcome questions at the end of the discussion, at the end of the 3 presentations during the discussion, and please use your chat function to write your questions. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome and thank our 3 guests, whom between them will give us a picture about the historic centers and cultural continuity across Iraq, starting with Baghdad, and then Najaf, and lastly, Tikrit. Our first speaker is Dr. Merie, covering the topic on Baghdad. She is a lecturer in architectural history and theory at the University of Babylon, Faculty of Engineering, Architectural Department. She received her PhD in Space, Cultures and Politics Studies from Sheffield School of Architecture at the University of Sheffield, where she was awarded a scholarship from the HCED program in Iraq. She holds an MA in Urban Design and Housing Planning from the University of Baghdad in 2011, and a BA with distinction in Architectural Engineering granted in 2007. Her research interests explores the history and theory of architecture and design in post-war cities, memory and conflict, identity, disappearing cultural heritage and identities, politics and policies, cultural trauma, and hierarchy of power. Welcome, Ola.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I would like to start my presentation just by start sharing. Okay. Thanks for inviting me today. I'm talking today about Baghdad, and a city, a tale of a bridge, and two main cities. Baghdad has 4 main cores of historic centers: Risafar, Terh, and Adamiyah, and Kadmiyah. They represented the remains of past 4 towns, which now surrounded by modern urban growth and physically well defined by their characteristic urban fabric and by the roads which have replaced their old walls. These historic centers are the perfect expression of traditional lives and the layout of typical Islamic city, where there were many of significant urban characters and forms that can include souk, khans, schools, mosques, mahallas, and shrines. However, it should be emphasized that Islam is a way of life, thus it's reflected on its urban and become a strong element to sustain the heritage and the cultural identity of its city. In this presentation, I revisit 2 cities on the opposite side of the river, yet they bonded by geography, history, identity, strong sense of solidity, and the desire to embrace this cultural continuity to protect their community's heritage. It is a tale of a river and 2 cities. In this presentation, I aim to argue how years of conflict, sectarianism, and war could be overcome by the revival of heritage and the social cultural value through exploring the narrative of Kadmiyah, Adamiyah, and Al-Imma Bridge. I just want to clarify one point before starting the presentation, that I'm using the terms Shu'i or Sunni, which I'm not in favor to use, but unfortunately it's become part of our identifying the communities and their background ethnicity, and it's defined also in our constitution. Moving to Kadmiyah. Kadmiya as a heritage centers. Kadmiya is relatively one of the more perceived historic centers in Baghdad. Its existence core is typical of all shrine cities in Iraq, such as Samarra, Karbala, and Najaf, with the mosque occupying its center and determining its functional and social life, with its 4 traditional mahalla that are surrounding it. With its 4 traditional mahalla that surrounding its historic center, Kadmiya defined as most of the perceived community. Kadmiya derives its name from the shrine of Imam Musa al-Kadhim, the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, who died and buried here in 800 AD during the early Abbasid period. The same area which was used before as a ground for the Quraysh tribes to be buried. It's become known widely as Quraysh cemetery. Kadmiya seems to have developed as a small town, which probably include the cemetery within its walls. As many other shore cities, Kadmiya suffer from many irregular flooded and also many destruction in its urban fabric, like many other cities in Baghdad, and also sectarianism conflict. However, the town began to thrive again and boosted by several important works. One of them was the complete rebuilding of Imam Musa al-Kadhim. Kadmiya exhibits in its atmosphere spontaneously looseness and informality, which give its visual experiment and character. Even when its different parts may often constructing or competing with each other, they still hold together like a museum, an organic museum, by unifying forces of Islam and its strong sense of tradition. You can see that it has many different intangible and tangible cultural heritage, which could be dividing by Khan, the Karbuli Khan, which was the first nucleus for Iraqi army that launched in 1921, and also many libraries, well-defined libraries, many schools, Islamic one, their traditional mahalla forms, and also tramways, all the traditional cafes, and of course, Starabadi Souk, which has sustained its anatomy and physical isolation, basically as a city from the rest of Baghdad, as its position as one of the most important religion center in Islam, as it every year attracts thousands of pilgrims from different parts of Iraq and other countries. This is part of the ceremonies that held in the 25th of Rajab, which hold and attract thousands of people towards the shrine of Imam Musa al-Kadhim. And there is other significant character that defines its social and cultural value, such as the traditional social interaction that Saharati in Ramadan and the children in the morning of Eid. You can see in this picture, and other traditional Baghdadian cafes, how the people sit and gather outside these places as a social interaction places. And of course, the ceremony of Muharram, the reviving Ashura ceremonies, which this picture refers to it as early in the 20th. There is also many intangible cultural heritage value that referring to it, like the people who walk every year towards, as part of their rituals, towards the shrine of Imam Musa al-Kadhim. There is also one of the largest market in Baghdad for the dictated for jewelry and golds to buy the bride's dowry. There is also the cooking procession during the ceremonies that done by many people who sponsored and volunteers by the local people of the city. So it has many cultural and social cultural value between its urban fabric. Now moving to the other side of the river, the Adamiyya, which is now remains of the Abbasiyan Shammasiyya and Risafah. This historical was first developed as a cemetery by Sassanians, and the Abbasians continued to use it as a burial place. However, when they celebrated the Imam al-A'zam who died, Abu Hanifa, in this place, he was buried here in this area and later on expanded to become an urban settlement. This is Adamiyya, and this is the site of Kadmiya. This is the bridge that we used to connect it between both cities. Yet it maintained its core because of the importance of the mosque. Thus, the mosque and its cemetery till today represent an important historic landmark and an urban feature in the whole northern zone of eastern Baghdad. You can see many also intangible and tangible features in the city. It holds in its, between its layer different schools that dated back to 1000 AD, and also different urban features and characters that related to its mahalla, like Safina neighborhood that's located along the riverside. There is also the Railway Cemetery by the British architect J. Cooper. There is also Ali Beit University, which was the first national universities by Colonel James Mehsen. This is the only building that has been built by the university because of different political conflict. At that time, they stopped building the whole university campus and they just finished one building of them. There is also Rashid Ali Gailani House, which was a prominent Iraqi political and a national symbol who served 3 times as a prime minister. And his house now turned into become a museum. There's also Al-Khayzaran Cemetery, which was dated back to Imam Abu Hanifa. It's named after Al-Khayzaran, which was the mother of Harun al-Rashid. So A'dhamiyya is a rich community also in terms of its tangible and intangible value, which one leading us to one of the prominent, attractive ceremonies that held in A'dhamiyya. It's the landmark of its clock tower that related to Imam Abu Hanifa Nu'man, which dated back to 1990. And also you can see in this image the gathering people of Baghdadian gathering in this place as part of their rituals and celebrating the birth of Prophet Muhammad every year, especially in this place. You can see also that it has many traditional cafes and musical bands like Golden Chalghel Baghdadi, and also there is a famous playing which called Al-Mhaybis. This is also part of the ceremonies that held in every year, lighting candles, celebration their Prophet's birthday near Imam Abu Hanifa Nu'man. And there is also one of the main rituals and the traditionals is the Eid prayers outside the mosque of Abu Hanifa. So both of them hold many significant characters. So in conclusion, because of various past religions and political factors, Kadmiya and A'dhamiyya has managed to evolve and return a very rich and interesting historical course despite the recent tragical losses, which it has been affected by many factors like intensive attacks of modern development and random planning. Yet it is still there is still a rare opportunity to stop this and save the unique urban core that is still integrated with its social and cultural value. Al-A'imma Bridge. The old bridge was consisting of adjusting pontons linked by strong ropes to a historical building from the other side of each side, one of them called the Palace of Sanaya. And each one of these called a Duba, which is like a floating, military floating bridge. This bridge used to connect between the both parts of the city. And there is used to be many stories and funny tales about the bridge and the floating bridge of A'dhamiyya, as it was often released from its bond that connecting to the bank and set off floating in the Tigris River, and people wake up and found their bridge had fled. Most of the people in the area volunteer to search for the floating pontons, who find it a few kilometers away and return it accompanied by folk music and halahel from women. For reconciliation, thinking that he was left the place because he was upset or angry, until the construction of the new bridge, which was opened in 1957. The construction of the new bridge has replaced the older bridge of A'dhamiyya and the bridge, modern bridge that connecting between both of the city. During the opening ceremony, the people argue about naming the bridge, which was one of the major let's say, argument around who will desire to have this bridge and called it after the city name. And here the monarchy that represented by King Faisal II decided to call it after the both of imams each side, so called it Al-Imma Bridge. So to solve this conflict and to refer to the both communities who living on the opposite sides of the river. Yet, another chapter has begun after 2003 when many incidents happened, such as sectarianism, conflict, and war. One of the major disasters that faced Baghdad in 2005 was around when around 1 million pre-regime had gathered to march toward Kadmiyah. And tension had begun highly with the crowd when rumors of a suicide bomber attack broke up, panicking many pilgrims. The panicked crowd flocked to the bridge, which had been closed. Somehow the gate of the end of the bridge opened and the pilgrims rushed through. Some people fell in the concrete base and died intensely. The ensuing crush of people caused many to suffocate, and the other pressure of the crowd caused to the bridge iron railway to give away, dropping hundreds of people into the river, in the Tigris River. There was none here on the bridge of the people to go, nowhere to go, and the other end of the bridge remained closed and was impossible to open anyway, so it's all open inward. Owing to the nature of the incident, many of those who died were from the considered as physically weakened, such as the elderly, women, and children, which was one of the major accidents that happened in 2005. One of the attempts to rescue the people who dived from both ends of the bridge, trying to help those drowning, was by the Sunni side's calls from the loudspeakers of local from the mosque to help those who were in trouble. One of the youngest man, called Uthman Ali Abdel Hafiz, rescued people, 6 people, and by the 7th one, he fled and also drowned in the river. This incident opened the way and it triggered many other conflicts in the area. So what's happened later? Both cities now suffocating from the walls that has been built around them, widening the gap, which was one of the major decisions that have been taken by U.S. Army to close all the areas that walking towards Adamiyah and Kadmiyah. This bridge between the two districts, as they referred in the public media, is a symbol of Baghdad sectarianism and divisions. This is how they refer to the bridge afterwards. Especially when a series of bomb attacks later years, often triggering traffic in the morning rush hour or checkpoints or the entrance of Adamiyah. So now they thinking that the bridge may cause more conflict and we need to control moving between the city by closing the city with concrete walls around 5 kilometers around Adamiyah and also increasing the checking points towards Kadmiyah. Especially there is many cars bombs have been attacking both cities and many people has died as a result of that. This one, as a symbol of many checkpoints, this one is down the bridge towards Kadmiyah area. And this one from Adamiyah side, where is a student, he tried to cross to his school. Isolating the community by many checkpoints area in different parts of the city as a way to protect the community, as the political referred to, as increasing the segregation and also the conflict between the community, especially when it's influenced and enhanced by the political media. This also an image showing students going to their schools through crossing the concrete walls that surround their city. How heritage and cultural value can overcome the conflict. After that, in 3 years, The two communities stress that opening the bridge is a message to people of Baghdad to encourage the national reconciliation and a message to tourism that there is a determination to open roads and the bridge despite all the challenges. So both communities working together to open the bridge and overcome this conflict by being one community again and emphasizing the relation that gathered them through the bridge as a physical element. Reopening the bridge has created a new way to connect the people, and the people in Adamiyah and Kadmiyah celebrating that in many ways. This one is a representation of Uthman Ali Abdel Hafiz, who died while he trying to save many Shia pilgrims at that day. And also they give him a statue around along the river down the bridge near Adamiyah area, because his message that we are one nation and one religion. Many public media and journals has referring to opening the bridge as a message to overcome the conflict, using the cultural heritage that's shared between these two communities as a way to overcome the sectarianism and the conflicts. This one also showing people celebrating opening the bridge and doing many like festivals for painting, drawings, raising flags on the clock towers. Here is also a different way of celebrating the bridge and the opening of the bridge. They having balloons, coloring the bridge pedestrian path to emphasize the role that has been played by this bridge to unify the community, especially that they hold between each other many and share between each other as a communities the same value, social, cultural values and backgrounds, and making it not a way to symbolize their unity between these two communities. This one taken in last October, which also the people use the bridge as a pedestrian path by the pilgrim to use Holy Kadmiyah on occasion of the Prophet Muhammad's birthday, and how they celebrated it through the bridge reaching to Imam Musa al-Kadhim. So when culture respected can unite and help heal wounds, when perceived and cared for, it enables progress and understanding. So this is the end slide of my presentation. Thank you, and I hope I finish on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ola. I think we'll leave all questions to the end and we'll continue with our presentations. Our next speaker is Dr. Ali Naji Attiyah. He will be covering the topic on Ali is a has a PhD in structural engineering from University of Baghdad, obtained in the year 2000. He's assistant professor in the civil engineering department at the University of Kufa and a member of the National Committee to inscribe Wadi Salam Cemetery on the World Heritage List. He's a principal investigator of a £30,000 grant from Nahrein Network, University College of London, to study the heritage buildings in Kufa. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you very much, Sana, for this introduction. And also let me thank the Shabakat al-Nahrein and the Chatham House for giving me this opportunity to talk about the city, where I am teaching, where I'm also living. My presentation will discuss the main topic of this webinar, the cultural continuity in our historic city centers. What about it? And I will talk about Najaf as a case study. Let me first show you this short movie. was at the beginning of March when I was attending a workshop on heritage in Barcelona in Spain. I took this short clip in my mobile and sent it to one of my friends in Najaf. In the beginning, he thought that it was in Najaf, but when he saw the level of conservation of the buildings, of everything, then he recognized this is not Najaf because the situation in Najaf, a lot of deterioration in everything. Now, if we compare the both cities, we will see many, many similarities. For example, the old fabric of both cities, and also the domination of a main building, a main monument in both cities, like the Cathedral of Familia Sagrada and the Imam Ali Shrine. But you can compare now the situation of both cities and how people, unfortunately, the authorities and local people in this city did not respect the main monument and the domination of the golden dome of Imam Ali Shrine on the city. Regarding the narrow routes and the buildings, you can see in Barcelona, it looks at a lot of regulations and a lot of power to keep these regulations work. But unfortunately in Najaf, as you see, the new buildings with the new elevations and the new heights and so on destroy everything in the old city. And even in Barcelona, when they add a new building, like you see in this right-hand picture, you can see there is a regulation for everything, for the finishing and so on. But vice versa, the situation in Najaf, you can see now this building with a new finishing. So the question was, and it was also a main question maybe every day in this city, why it continues to deteriorate? Why our cultural heritage in this city is not important for both the authorities and the local people? This question may lead us for many trends to research about this point. Let me first define some terms. It is important to answer this question. The main one is the living heritage. We have to should have a very clear idea about the historic cities. For example, when you compare now Babylon with Najaf, you will see that Babylon was kept as it is, in spite of some changes during the past period, past regime. But because it was not used by people in a living heritage, can be kept. But Najaf, it's not the same example. Najaf, there's a lot of needs in this city, and I will talk about those needs. And because of there is no satisfaction of such needs, so I can say that this mess situation in development and everything. Najaf in the past, as you see, it has a very clear identity from the urban point of view or from the architectural point of view. It was surrounded by fence, and there is a main buildings in the middle or in the center of the city, surrounded by a lot of activities. But I can say that even in that period, the dimension of Najaf is beyond this 1 square kilometer or this circle as you see in the picture. And day by day, later, this dimension was increased more. For example, many pilgrims, a lot of pilgrims, millions of people come to the city. For this, I put now a question in this presentation. What is the dimension of this city? Who should care of this city? Just the people living in the city, or maybe we have in all the globe, there are people coming to the city and visit the shrine and also visit the largest cemetery in the city. So let me also define another terms from UNESCO literature to see what is the cultural identity of people and why now those people related to this city did not care for the cultural identity, which is related to the buildings, to the old fabric of the city. As you know that the UNESCO declared the definition of culture, which is whole complex of many things. It's not only related to the physical things, the buildings and so on, but many beliefs, many traditions and so on. So this leads that each group in this globe should have cultural identity. And this enhances the cultural diversity and should be kept for people. And as you know that the Article 1 of UNESCO Declaration of Cultural Diversity, it is one of the challenge for all the human beings that diversity was threatened by globalization. But maybe for all people, when they hear about heritage or cultural heritage, they're thinking in physical things only. For example, they're thinking in the list and what are the places inscribed to the list. For example, those two examples from Iraq, Hatra in the north and also Ashur in the north of Iraq, they are inscribed to the list. But as I mentioned, those are not part of living heritage cities. So there is no any problem of development or there are communities or groups using these cities in their traditions and their daily life. So I put here a question also for those specialists in heritage. Are the criteria used by World Heritage Committee is enough to keep the heritage value for people? I think this is a very huge question for people. Maybe the answer was from the tourism point of view, from the commercial point of view, but I think the value, this term is beyond this dimension. For this, UNESCO in two conventions, one in 2003 and the other in 2005, tried to focus on another type of cultural heritage to bring the value for the heritage. For example, the intangible cultural heritage, what also Iraq started to have focus on those and try to choose many elements of such type of heritage to inscribe in the list, like those Nowruz traditions and Arba'in visitations, hospitality traditions. And one of them also Maqam Khadr al-Yas in Baghdad and the traditions. So let me also define here this type of heritage. It is the practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, etc. It was practiced by communities because those are types of their identity. And practicing of such type of heritage always needs the place because the place has the spirit of such type of traditions and such type of cultural heritage. So this should give those for each community sense of identity and sense of continuity, so it should be safeguarded. I think this is the point which we can go inside and try to use it to enhance this feeling in anyone in living or relating to the historic city, to keep the city, to the physical buildings, to the Nara roads, because it is part of his cultural identity. Now, the question is, when I now put a very broad dimension for Najaf, from the social and economic value point of view, who are the people who should be interested in Najaf cultural heritage in this small zone, historic city? First, I think, is the pilgrims, which are all over the globe, as I said. They are coming every year, many days, by millions, to visit the shrine and the cemetery. But those people now, when they come to the city and visit those holy places for them, they need to develop many things they are using. For example, transportation, accommodation, services, and so on. So this is very important for the people. For this, for example, the government, when tried to give some services or try to improve the transportation roads and so on, or maybe demolish parts of the city to make it, for example, for parking, for cars and so on. So those are real needs which threaten the cultural heritage of this city. The second community related to the city, which is very known in the city, which is a scientific city, I can say, Al-Hawza al-Ilmiya, or those cleric students who came also from different cultures, from different countries, and study in the city. Those also need and new spaces day by day, their life are developed and improved. So they need, for example, houses, schools, etc., and also cultural spaces, because they have certain traditions in their study. As you see, they refuse to study, for example, in a session hall and so on. They need a cultural spaces because they have some traditions, which, as I mentioned, it's part of their cultural identity. The third community related to Najaf are the workers. Those are not only living in the city and working in the city, also they came from different Iraqi cities to work in Najaf, because the business is very good in this city. And I should mention here some types of handicrafts, some things made by hand in this city, and I will mention later. So also those need transportation to come to work, and also they have some certain economic activities. They need a new shops, for example, a new small factories to manufacture those things, and many services. All those needs threatened the cultural heritage of the city. The fourth and the last group, those are the people living in the city, maybe from 100 years. And those also need a new life, because they are living in very bad situation in those houses. For example, as you see, the sanitary, the water, and so on. And sometimes when they shopping and bringing some, for example, some instruments or some like televisions or so on, and want to carry inside those narrow roads, they are suffering from this thing. So I think also this is one of the things which threatens the cultural heritage. But we have a very strong point. We can use it to solve this problem. There is what I call it now in this presentation, interaction of social and economic values between those four groups. And I will show you only some examples, because I did not make a survey, for example, made a survey very detailed, just made some interviews with some people inside the city and from my life inside the city. The pilgrims always, when they come to the city, they need to take something from the city, which they believe as a part of their beliefs. It's some holiness in this part. For example, the rings or the sweet, which named Dahin in the city. So this gives opportunity for workers and residents to improve those things, and because they need shops to sell those things, and also they need small factories inside the spaces to manufacture such things and sell it to those pilgrims. So there is interaction. If they improve their life, their work, their business, I think they will have a very strong relation to the spaces inside the city, to for example, the old bazaar, and also the houses and the roads in the city. The other example related to the other groups, for example, those students dressing some tradition, for example, amama and abaya and so on, and also the shoes. They are dressing special shoes, not similar our shoes. In the Arabic, we named gawa. Those also, the dressing and the shoes and so on, are manufactured inside the city, and maybe used very old instruments and by hand, more of them. So also it is good opportunity to make those groups together have this interaction, cultural interaction between them, to make them aware, maybe more than the authorities, about this city and about the future of the city. So as a summary, if we think in the human of, if you would study the cultural heritage from the human point of view, from its identity point of view, from the values, or show those people the values of the heritage for their life and their continuity in the next generation, I think we will keep our cities as it is. I will end my presentation with one example. The example is from London. You can see now they are proud, for example, some photographer to took pictures from certain parts of London to show people that after 100 years, it was the same street, the same building, the same elevations for buildings and so on. As you see now, this is a House of Parliament. Also, this is another part of the city, for example, Piccadilly Circus. Also, they mixed the two photos from nowadays and 100 years ago. So if we think why those people in United Kingdom kept the streets as it is and the building, do not think in, for example, widening the streets like happened in Iraq, in the cities of Iraq, in Najaf, for example. I think they solved the main problem in the city. It is the transportation. Because how can, maybe I think now 18 million living in the city, how can they transport every day? Thousands of them want to move to their work, to their study, and so on. I think the underground solution for this network of transportation, it was a huge step to keep those buildings and cities as it is. But this is not the end of the story, because now I think a lot of written in the last decade about the skyscraper in London, and also the cultural value of the Tower of London, for example, and what will happen to it, because it is part of, let me say, the identity of the city, of the UNESCO list. So I think the debate will continue. It will not end by only using the solution for transportation, because there is economic, let me say, or over commercial pressure on such monuments. Thank you very much. And I hope that I deliver my message to you.
Thank you very much, Ali. This is a very interesting conversation. I have jotted quite a few questions. Before we start conversations, we have one last speaker for the day. And our next speaker is Dr. Mustafa Mehsen. He will be covering the topic on Tikrit. Mustafa has a PhD in archaeology, ancient languages from University of Baghdad, obtained in the year 2014. He's a lecturer in the Department of Ancient Iraqi Languages, College of Archaeology at the University of Mosul, and a co-investigator of a £10,000 grant from Nahrein Network, University College London, to study the digital documentation of heritage sites affected by armed conflict in Tikrit province, northern Iraq. Welcome, Mustafa.
Thank you, Dr. Sana. Did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you share with us this screen? Do you have presentation?
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Thank you for your patience. This is my proposal about Tikrit city, and the title, Digital Documentation of Heritage Sites that affected by armed conflict in Tikrit province, northern Iraq. Here we have this historical and background about Tikrit. Is one of the famous ancient cities in northern of Iraq. It was replaced like the other Iraqi cities. It's full with archaeological sites and past area with places, houses of religion. So our project will focus on the archaeological sites that affected or influenced by the conflict with Daesh or ISIS. The first one is Ashur, the ancient city of Assyria. Ashur city in Shirkat and its famous castle which include the remains of the kings who ruled this country from all regions of Iraq, is located, I'm agree with Dr. Ali. This is, he talked about the cemetery of Najaf. That's very good. But this is the cemetery of Assyrian period or Assyrian ruler. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Your talking is applied on my situation on this Ashur city. Assyrian kingdom and administrative kingdom. European travelers, this is not related, just background, not related with our subject or not a main point. The main point is, like you see in this presentation, gate of Tabira. We know Ashur, the city of Ashur, it is a religious or sacred, more sacred city in all over the Assyrian cities like Nineveh, Namrud, but the sacred is becoming from the religious position, because all the kings and all the rulers of Assyrian Empire buried here. The citadel of Assyrian is one of the most important historical monuments in Iraq. Its wall include many gates. The main gates is known as the Kur-Kuri. Kur-Kuri, as the Akkadian language, Kur, this is belong to Sumerian language. Kur, it's meaning country. Kur-Kuri, and it's meaning the country of countries. Gates, or Tabira. The Tabira gate was severely damaged by the ISIS. We know ISIS is made a lot of damage in our material, as well as in everything. Who tried to destroy it with explosion in May 2050, destroying 7% of it. The lower part of the gate was damaged. We have another problem faced this building. The rain also penetrate this cultural gate as the following is, which further eroded it. You see these pictures that's affected. This picture represent the damage or from bombed from ISIS. This is the first one, and this is a holy. I can't call it. It's a holy gate because I think before this damage we have nouns called this gate in our Iraq, in our country. I'm sorry, in our country we have a certain nouns for the gates. This is in Akkadian language. We have a brochure that's suspended here on the face of this gate. It's meaning in Akkadian, E Yobur Shabu, my enemy, not a cross. As well as in the Babylonian city, it's called Ashtar Shakbat Tibisha in Akkadian. It's meaning the goddess Ashtar conquered her enemies. The second one in our study, in the same position, on the same site, the Royal Cemetery. The Royal Cemetery is one of the most important monuments in the city of Assyria. It was obtained with great interest during the 80s of the 20th century, as it has been enclosed in the structure of iron and glass cover to keep them. All the glass was broken. This is a damage that make this picture or this cemetery influenced with destroy, and this is remain. You can see this picture. The second site, Al-Arba'in Cemetery. ال40 cemetery shrine ال40 cemetery يعني مقبرة ال40 cemetery or 40 shrine in Tikrit. Location and description: the cemetery and building of the 40 shrine is located on the western side of ancient city of Tikrit and at distance of 650 meters, which is square shaped building. The length of each side is 47 and 70 meters from north to south. This is a description of distance of building. The important things, this is the conclusion. It was destroyed by ISIS on Thursday, 25 September 2014, and as shown in the picture below, you can see it. I think this is 40. It's come from this is word 40 came from the word 40. There's 40 friends, 40 person, 40 symbols of Muslims that conquer the enemies in this, and they are killed all. This is in a sacred position or sacred place. You can see this in this point. This is influenced or damaged by ISIS. The third site or the third heritage of Mohammed al-Durri in Ad-Dar district, Imam Muhammad al-Durri shrine, location and historical background: a cultural symbol located on the western side of ancient city of Ad-Dar, overlooking the Tigris rivers, and its building in distinctive through its. This is Muqarnas. It's meaning ribbit dome. Ribbit dome. This is one style of architecture, Islamic architecture, that is including decorative formation and memorial inscription that's mentioned in this. This last, when the province were occupied by ISIS, they blow up the shrine. They blow up the shrine on 24 October 20 and 14. Thus, an important culture of historical moment, and the architecture style was lost. It's indeed lost, because there is some reconstruction on this shrine, on this site, are made today, supported from other organization. But when I saw like this reconstruction and remedies, it's not concordance with the standard things. I'm sorry, it's lost, was lost, the style and everything for this rare architectural style. The last one, the green church in Tikrit. The green, it came from the color of this church dating back about 1,300 years ago in Tikrit, the largest in Salah ad-Din Governorate, north of Baghdad. It is the, I think this is names of church now as the Green Church, and it was the sense of massacres of Christian at the hands of Mongol during the year 1258. This is the picture that represents the damage. This is before destroy, and this is after destroy. Our ambition, are we looking forward to support? I agree with Dr. Ali. There's no important, no significant stand for like this archaeological sites to develop, to make a sustainable plan to preservation like this or conservation this, like this archaeological sites, because this is the, I think there's not any care from our governorates or any sites that represent archaeological or cultural heritage in our country. Thank you for good listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mustafa. Can you stop sharing? Thank you. That's great. Thank you. Thank you all. This has been it's been quite touching, actually, just to see a few of the sites that I studied when I was back at university. What I was going to start by saying is that there is a very interesting connection between the three topics. Not only that the discussion is all around the loss of cultural heritage, identity, and so on and so forth, but I kind of feel that it goes back a little bit more, just picking on Dr. Ali's work, is that there is this richness of diversity of lots of different groups living, working together, commerce, doing all kinds and sorts of other activities. But actually there is no communication, there is no clear education that sits at the bottom of the pile, even from primary school kind of children, to educate them about the heritage, the way it is taught in, let's say, in the UK now, just seeing how my children are taught about, you know, cultural sites in this country. So I wondered whether not only the war has pushed and sectarianism has pushed all of this up, and also ISIS, but I was wondering whether there is any effort that you can see that could work at really pushing for education to happen right from the bottom up across the country, not just government implementation, because we know that this is all also to deal with money. But is there an appetite now that you feel that there is for such discussion, which I don't think a lot of us has missed on when we were studying in Iraq? Dr.
Yeah.
Ali, maybe?
Yes, I agree with you on this point, because always I say that not only the conflicts and the wars threatening our heritage, because in Najaf we have, let me say, almost peace in all those years, for 10 or more years. But the development itself, sometimes maybe as an engineer living in Najaf and teaching in Najaf, maybe you wish that there is no money for development. Why I wish that there is no money? Because the money there's a destruction of the heritage, because the people only thinking in building new hotels and so on, just thinking the money. They didn't think in the identity, in the value, in the culture. And I know when they will lose this later, they will feel shame from this. And this happened many times. For example, even for persons, when the person died, they say, oh, he was great. But when he was alive, many people attack him and aggressive against him. And the same regarding the heritage. So this is the problem. This happened with me. Let me tell you a short story. At 2012, there's a nomination for Najaf to be the capital of the Islamic culture. And there is a lot of money came to the city to be built on the environment, the buildings, and so on, and develop some projects. I was at that time member of committee related to the heritage, because part of the heritage sites should be at that time is a part of this celebration or this festival in 1 year, 2012. And when the committee of our committee are visiting the city, I saw that there is a very old house with very beautiful finishing and so on. It is by 50% was demolished. And it is because a new hotel, they are digging a very large hole to build a basement. And then I feel sorry to see that and take some photos. And when the committee go far away from this site, one of the young engineers come beside me, and I saw him, one of my former students, I think 10 years ago. I saw, please don't tell me that you are the engineer of this new hit-up. He said, yes. Is there a problem? Because I'm afraid, I don't know who you are, what are you doing, and taking pictures, but I feel very afraid from you. I'm thinking that I should say to him a very hard words, but I just think in myself, I didn't teach him about heritage. He took civil engineering BSc from my college and didn't hear about the value of the heritage and so on. Just maybe we learn him that how to invest, how to make use of the new concrete and so on, new materials. So I go away silent. I didn't say anything for this student. So I agree with you on this point, Doctor.
Yeah. Ola?
Yes. Well, in terms of education, I think as an architect, we are lucky to have some backgrounds and interest in visiting these historic centers during our studies. And I believe that studying in UK give us a different perspective towards understanding and perspective of our historic centers. Precisely when you see that how the people interact and aware about their cultural and identity in these places. They have their kind of a proud and feel of a strong feeling of belonging towards these places. Unfortunately, the people who are now responsible about these historic centers may have lack in funding, may have lack in opposing law on these places, even when they are maybe professional and understand its importance. Yet the conflict that are behind the political scenes and how they're controlling these historic centers. Many divisions now heading towards controlling these historic centers, may related to Ministry of Cultures, maybe to Mayoralty of Baghdad, maybe also to the endorsement Sunni of or endorsement of Shia. So different division, different parties who show their interest in this heritage center. And this is, I think, awaken imposing law and how to control the community and empower their role within these historic cultures. Maybe if we have a representative from each community, a group of representative, well-known, respected people who understand the history of these places, how can they manage or even control different acting or action that taken by the people themselves, like expanding the fence, expanding their gardens over these places. It's like we need a social and a public awareness by the community itself towards empowering the heritage of these places. It's not just about who have the authority, it's also about the community who is living there.
Absolutely, very good point. Mustafa, do you have something else to add to this?
Yeah, thank you. I think the world envy us for like this cultural heritage, but we didn't pay close attention for like this heritage. I live every day with our heritage, with our civilization, because we use today a lot of word that's spread in our society. I'll say this is like a wisdom of we can't preserve or protect our cultural heritage with armed forces or armed people, with walls, just with a main point. It's to educate the people, to increase the awareness of people, to protect their history, their cultural heritage. Thank you for good listening. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. We have a question here from Alexander. Alexander, would you like to put your mic on and maybe your camera to ask the question? Or maybe I will ask it. So he thanks all three of you. Excellent presentations by brilliant speakers. And then he says, are there public libraries in Najaf and Tikrit?
I think he's the...
You're here. Okay, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah.
It's nice to see some faces.
Sure. Nice to see you. And thank you again for 3 excellent presentations also. So very well done. So my question was really only about the library resources at these 3 places that you introduced today. So are there public libraries where people can get together and have discussions like the ones that you also did here today? So this is my only question. So, but thank you for the fantastic presentations, really, to all the 3 of you.
Ladies first.
Thank you. Well, we can say that the public that related to Hadrat al-Kadhmiya, it's one of the richest libraries in Baghdad. If you are looking towards like understanding the historic city core of Kadhmiya, they have original material and many archival books also can be used, but it's need like special access toward approaching these kind of libraries. There is also on another part of Adamia, there is also a public library it's have a great archival material. But unfortunately, it's the way that they're presenting these material, it's hard to be accessed maybe by the public people, maybe by the professionals who are working or related to an institution. It's easier to them to get these material, not by all the people, but there is public libraries in both sides of the city, yes.
Yes, regarding Najaf, Alexander, yes, because one of the, let me say, main things in Najaf is the libraries, because it is scientific cities. And the wonderful thing in Najaf that there are a library for manuscripts, thousands of old manuscripts now in Najaf, and it is for public, can take pictures or photos and maybe investigation and so on. So libraries is a part of the cultural activities in the city.
Mustafa, how about Tikrit?
Okay, Alexander, about the north regions, if you talk about library, we lost everything because of ISIS.
Yes, yes.
It is just we come to make a little group to collect a lot this box, not really box, but the good and precious books. It's lost and burnt in Mosul University and in Tikrit because they are conquest also objected by Daesh and burnt every cultural things, every box related with our cultural heritage. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Dr. Ala, there is another part to Alexander's question, which is about the homes of the books in the 2 parts of Baghdad, so Karkh and Rasafa.
In terms of Karkh and Rasafa, well, there is also different public libraries that could be accessed. Even the National Archival Library, it's in Bab al-Mu'azzam. It's like another historic centers located in Rasafa. It's a well-respected library. They have many original material that could be used in your research if you are looking about specific materials. But many, to be honest, many of my presentation image that I used today, I used it from the network and the social media because it's easy to access and it's already available online. And some of them related to the website that related to Hadrat al-Kadhmiya or to Imam Abu Hanifa website that related to Sunni endorsements. So you can access them if you are looking about like general images about the city. You can search for it online, find it. Yeah.
There is a question from Merie here. Merie, do you want to come on to ask it, or would you like me to ask it on your behalf? I always think it's nice to see faces interacting with the speakers.
Thank you. I was just wondering for Dr. Mustafa, what type of support is required that Tikrit needs right now? Because it looks as if there's some neglect of Tikrit, both in terms of understanding the destruction that's happened in Salah ad-Din and Tikrit, probably the other provinces. So I'm wondering, you know, could you tell us a bit more, Dr. Mustafa, about what type of support, international or also from the rest of the country, that you need now in Tikrit, whether it be for the protection, the promotion of heritage? That would be very, very important. Is there any work being done now regarding some of the sites that you've mentioned, regarding rehabilitation, reconstruction, sort of anything updated on that, and an update on that situation would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, I'll answer. Thank you. Not just Tikrit city, and this is a rich cities of northern cities in Iraq. All of it suffering from ignoring and neglection from all the sides. I think we must put hand in hand to rebuild and remedies these archaeological sites and every cultural heritage, even the language, Sumerian language, and the buildings. I give you a present just 3 or 4 sites, but we have a lot of sites that's suffering from neglection, and like in Mosul, like in Kirkuk city, ISIS destroy everything. Thank you.
Can I add something, Sana, for
Yes,
this?
please.
For Mahyar, it is very important the question, but let me mention Samarra as example, because Samarra also part of Salah ad-Din Governorate, and it's belong to the center of Tikrit city. The bad situation of Samarra now, it is divided into 2 parts, let me say that, like that. The shrine is surrounded by concrete walls, and it is a part or separated from the other city. I am working also in development of the engineering education. And 1 year ago, I visited University of Samarra, the College of Engineering, to check the curriculum and so on. It's one of the part of my duties. I saw in the agricultural department in the College of Engineering that many of the projects of the 5th year is on the shrine, on development of the shrine and the zone surrounded this shrine. I asked the chair and the dean at that time, did you cooperate with the shrine authorities and let me say Al-Waqf al-Shi'i and so on about these projects? He said, unfortunately, no. They did not know about that, and there is no any cooperation between us, because as you see, there are 2 cities inside this zone, Samarra. I said to him, this is a very important opportunity for peace building, because those students is from the city, and this monument is very important to the life of the city. Because when we are young, when we are visit the city, we know that the tribes and the people, there's a lot of traditions used in this building. For example, like marriage and so on. And why don't you coordinate, or let me say, give your hand to the other parts, the authorities, and show them that your students, those people from Samarra, also take care about this. This building is very important for their future and the coming generation. Thank you.
Dr. Ali, this is not archaeological building, it's a military point.
Yes, I know, but for this, I mentioned that, and also let me add something. When I return back to Najaf, I know. Yes, let me say something. We should be brave to break the ice. When I return back to the city, Najaf, I know a very important cleric people in Najaf, and also I told them the same thing, because I know there is a lot of research centers for Samarra in Najaf. And also
I think there's no difference, just a little difference between ISIS and investment.
Yes, exactly. So I think always the first step is the most difficult step. Who will did it? Because maybe sometimes understood in a bad way. So I told the centers in Najaf that please go to the tribes surrounding this shrine and go to them and try to make research about the traditions in the past related to the building. It is not the building.
No.
People. It is the people, the human life. I'm sorry for this because it may be feeling mixed with something scientific. I'm sorry.
I'm feeling like you feel.
No need to apologize. Any further questions from anyone else from the floor? I was struck by numbers. So when I teach my students here on in architecture on conflict-related sites, and I bring examples of what goes on, what happened in Iraq, but also what happened in Syria. And on the UNESCO World Heritage Site, the list of World Heritage sites that are endangered, half of them are in Iraq, Yemen, and Syria. This is of the entire world. So there's 50% of those sites are in those three rich countries. And I was wondering what your kind of view on this from an engineering, from an architectural, and from an archaeological kind of link on the ways in which we can address this, but through the interdisciplinarity of the work that we can do. So not just going into every single project with just the mindset of one discipline. Because I also come from the background of sticking to the one discipline and not engaging with others when we're working. But I think this is another thing that I think the West does really well in engaging people who come from different disciplines to solve a problem. How do you think we can do something like that? Dr. Ola?
Well, during now I'm conducting a research around heritage and what is like the main problem or issues that's covering this area in different parts of Iraq. We can see that there is different examples of the community who are involving in heritage protection and how the authority also can work in parallel with that. But I think we need in Iraq a strong law, a strong power to control the unplanned and the random development that happen in these streets first, in the core historic centers of this city. We need a strong law and force later on when we have that and control these by maybe one unified part of law that's under control, maybe the Ministry of the Prime Minister Office directly without having this kind of different department and divisions, which may be related to different parties and their different political backgrounds and basically muhassasa, how they look at the heritage centers according to their benefits. Maybe if we have one general authority who are responsible about all the heritage centers and the historical parts of Iraq, after that, maybe raising the public awareness to these towards understanding the cultural and how it's crucial for peace buildings, how it's important to control and to sustain their identity for the future generations. So I think we are missing the law in this state, in this level of time. Yes.
Dr. Ali?
I think the law alone is not enough. Yes, the law is very important because we need both two things, law and power of the law, because sometimes there is a law, but there is no power. For example, in Naji, you saw now a lot of buildings, a lot of new hotels are very heights, are higher than the shrine of Imam Ali. There is a law, but no one, because it is a very weak law. When in some meetings with the authorities, they said they are building in the night. What about the night? The night is the same as the day. What about the forces and so on? Yeah, something maybe they are kidding. So we need, I think, in my opinion, we need some compromise in this point. Law is not enough because we need that to start from the people themselves. and ask them why they are, for example, building such multi-story, and they want to improve their life. This is my point. This is my main point in my presentation. Start thinking in people, their way of life. Those people now living in those old houses, there is a very bad air conditioning and very bad weather environment. There is not good for health and so on. So what we do for them to improve their life? This is the question, I think, before the law.
Thank you. Dr. Mustafa?
Thank you. If the situation relate with Tikrit, not relate just with Tikrit, with all the three provinces, Mosul and Kirkuk, we suffer from like this problem. I agree with Dr. Ali. I haven't answered more than this.
Thank you. Wajdan, would you like to ask your question? You just put something down here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hiya, good evening, everyone. Thank you for all three speakers. Very nice discussion. As for what your statement, what you said about the endangered archaeological sites, in 2016 there was a lecture in Oxford University about it, and the call for NATO to find a special department for the protection of world archaeological sites, which freaked me out. However, I would like to ask Iraqi academics, why don't they galvanize other academics from around the world, archaeological academia and architects, to help them to call whoever become a prime minister to re-establish the culture and archaeological ministry in Iraq? That will go a long way in helping in every way. I mean, without it, we cannot even push the House of Commons, Majlis Nawab, to like set laws to protect these sites or direct funds to them. All we can do now is beg from international organizations and from the government. While if there is a ministry, it will be a budget set annually or like every 5 years for this, and it will help. It will go a long way. I wonder if
Dan, sorry to interrupt. I'm just trying to allow some more time for the speakers.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Sorry about that.
But there is a Ministry of Culture. So what would be the difference between the two, in your opinion?
So now we used to have وزارة الآثار. لغاها بريمر dismantled it. We don't have وزارة آثار anymore.
Ministry of Archaeology.
Yeah.
We don't have anymore.
Yeah, we don't have it. We need to re-establish it. We need to call for re-establishing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Ghade, can you come on to mention your comments here, if you like, or ask a question?
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm glad to see you all. See you, especially you, Sana, from all those years. Well, as we say in Arabic, al-hadith dhu shujun. I have been working on this subject for almost 30 years now. I know all these places. I know what is happening in them. I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm working as a consultant for so many governorates, and I also know the difficulties of the actual situation, not only what we think and our principles. Well, we have some complex in decision making. We need to have a unified, as Ola said, some kind of unification of the people who take the decision. Unfortunately, everybody is working by his or her own, or their office own, or the ministry, and there is no order or no planning among them. And the second thing is also, unfortunately, the power of money, the power of investors. And those investors, I think, as in all over the world, are powerful. And Iraq is in a need of money, especially the people who own these heritage places. Let me say clearly, many of them are willing to sell them, are willing to demolish them, and sell the grounds to have it for new buildings and to get a lot of money out of it. It's not the education of people only, but it's how we turn these heritage places to earn the investment through reviving them or through rehabilitating them. So in this case, we will not face the investment power. We will go with the investment power, they will help us. This is the main issue here. People are innocent to the degree that because they don't have the decision, but they need the money. And needing the money and having their buildings as they are will not be a good solution for them. This is what happened in Najaf, what is happening in Samarra, what is happening in every Iraqi city. Part of what happened because of ISIS, this is not the case, but this is the main problem. Yeah, and thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ghader. Mustafa El Sahab, would you like to ask your question?
Me?
Mustafa is asking, how can we raise the awareness about the importance of heritage in the historic centers for the people who are living inside them? What are the efforts that have been made until now? So maybe that's a question to you, Dr. Ali.
Yes, the answer simply, if they believe that the heritage is a reason to improve their life, they will take care about it. In what way? I think we need planning. Dr. Ghader mentioned a very important point about the decision making. But let me say, in Iraq, the successive governments did not have any cultural policy. They are thinking on only, for example, the security situation, the oil price, and so on. And for this, the Ministry of Culture sometimes separated from the Ministry of Archaeology, sometimes merged together. And I know that now, Dr. Hassan Nadom, he was the chairholder of UNESCO chair in my university. His efforts only to make a new structure for this ministry, because a lot of something repeated, many administrative, a lot of employees and so on. So this is maybe a very important point for the future, to have an administration which have a very clear structure, very clear duties for people. So I think the policy, the cultural policy, this is a very important term also for peace buildings, not only the cultural heritage conservation.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Norma Mona?
Yes, architect Nu'man, but I think he now left. He will return back. Yes, he has some suggestions for Naji. Yeah.
I think I can see that they're still there.
He just moved. I think he just moved. He has a phone. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any more questions?
Yes, I do have a question, Sana.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you again. So my question, I'm working in the neighboring country of Iran, and so I'm being aware really that there are universities also. There is so much investment also in heritage, in sites also. So why is there no kind of look into the East also, and how it's being done there? Why is there always this focus on the West and on the others? There is no Ministry of Culture in America. There is this country is certainly not here the leader in any of this. So I mean, just to say it frankly also, so I mean, my question to Ali, Ula, and Mustafa also, why not look towards those major centers also in the area there, and maybe even Amman, but of course Amman is also already so westernized in some way. So what about Iran?
Thank you, Alexander. This is a really good question. Dr. Ola?
Well, I think in terms of examples, yes, our neighbors country in Turkey, Iran, they have like significant projects that well known and presented in terms of preserving heritage. What we are missing in Iraq, I think, is stability, political environment that would reflect positively on the cultural development later on. The unstable political environment, the lack of security that many of Iraqi cities has during the last years has impacted the people's sense of belonging toward these places. I think, like I said in my presentation, even when we have like the incident that happened in 2005, the people decided to isolate themselves at the beginning because of the public media, how they raises like both of two communities are fighting because of their backgrounds. But later, after years, the people themselves, they try to reconnect again because they believing in their communities, how they're sharing different, even when they're sharing different, maybe ethnic, if we say it, but they still sharing a lot in terms of cultural and heritage backgrounds. So it may take years till understanding how heritage is crucial towards our community. But to be honest, now the country facing many challenges in terms of security, even the lack of money, the lack of funding towards developing the cultural side. I talked to many policymakers and political seniors who are working on managing the cultural and heritage side. Many of them referring that because even when we have money getting from this heritage center or historical location in Iraq, like by visitors or tourism, this money going directly to the main foundation to finance ministry, so they cannot controlling even the funding, the all funding they get from this location to improve it later on or to pay for a development in the next years. So I think we have like lack of controlling the cultural and the heritage side. And as Dr. Ghader said, many of people they don't have enough money to rehabilitate it or to pay for repairing these houses or these fabrics, the traditional fabrics of the city. So they prefer to sold it and have the money. And whenever these places turn into maybe hotels, restaurants, they don't care anymore. They just get the money and maybe buy another 50 meters in the same area, but new, so that this is enough for them. And I should emphasize something that related to Kavmia or Damia, to be honest, because it's come from personal experience. Both community, they are very proud of their backgrounds in terms of locating in Kavmia or Alamia, and they have even their special dialogues. Maybe they refer to themselves as Adamian or Kavmian, who speak in this dialogue between each other. And they be proud of their history and how they built this community years after years. But the challenges that faces the city, as I mentioned, car bombs during 2007, 2008, and even ISIS later on when they try to control these places and trigger the division between the communities. It's the security and safe is a major issue. So we need to control that at the beginning.
I think the question remains, Alex just asked, and I think Zainab is answering, which done on the chat. It remains interesting why we're still looking into the West and not neighboring countries or even other global South, let's say, based countries in the way that they reserve cultural heritage. So I wondered whether there will be a specific answer on this, if you know any. Dr. Ali? Dr.
Yes. Because of my bad connection, I lost some sentences from Alexander. If I understand the question very well or the point very well, I agree. We should make experience and make use of any experience from everywhere. But sometimes I agree with him in this point specifically, that if there is, for example, shared, for example, culture or shared value, maybe they can help us, for example, like sacred buildings, sacred shrines. I just mentioned here one example. I think Alexander know very well this example. University of Yazd made use of the historic city of Yazd to make the architectural department to study architecture inside the historic part of the city. I like this idea, and we established architecture department 2 years ago. And we are thinking now in, for example, maybe on one house or inside the city to make the students live maybe every day through their studying inside the city. And let me say, feel the values of this heritage for them. Because let me say something and be honest with you. Some of the destruction is because of the engineers themselves. Don't be angry from me. Many engineers, many architects did not care about who built this new buildings and new hotels in Najaf. Those are engineers, architects and civil engineers and so on. Why they didn't care of the finishing and elevations and the heights? So for this, Sana, you mentioned the education as a first point for this. So I agree with Alexander. We should make use of any experience, especially from those countries surrounding us.
Excuse me, can I comment on what Ali said?
Yes, Dr. Ghadir.
Well, Dr. Ali, we educate all the architects. They are not only engineers. And unfortunately, I see them as you see your students sometimes in the side responsible for bad mistakes like this. It's not the education. I think there are other things that affect the society, the type, the job they can get, so they're not doing the right job here. When they leave the department, everybody of them has a unique project. Most of the Department of Architecture have projects for this, not only Samara, for all the buildings or all the sites in the heritage areas and centers. And not in Samara, there is no connection. Everywhere there is no connection. But as soon as they leave the college or the university, they go back to job. There is the problem. Because I saw this in my work in the mayoralty of Baghdad, in the Ministry of Municipalities, and the Ministry of Transportation. What they are forced to do is something different that they have learned at the university.
That's absolutely true, and I vow for that. But there is also the other side of education, which happens right at the kind of younger, let's say, generation age. We get to read history and geography and so on and so forth in schools, not in university, and there is little around heritage. So that was my point on education, and I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of the teaching that happens in schools of architecture or engineering and archaeology across Iraq. So
let me Sana, add something, because there is a missing point, Dr. Aghat. I know very well what you mean, because the business, the job, the missed outcome in our education, especially engineering education, is the ethics. Responsible, because it's part of my work now to make those decision makers in the Ministry of Higher Education to put this in our curriculum, the ethics, the responsibility. I think this is the point which is important now, maybe in many universities in all over the world.
Very good point. There was a request to ask a question from Hanau. Can you come up to ask the question, or because there wasn't anything posted? No. Zainab Lamy, would you like to comment on your question? As a response to Wijdan point here, you said that this is where our role comes in, claiming our narratives and understanding how to preserve our history without eradicating our own narrative and our own unique history. So I think it was an interesting point to connect that to also memory and the cultural identity and the way it's always used as the first kind of pole or call of like a weapon of war. And there are quite many literature on the subject where heritage is used as a tool for war. So it would be really interesting to see now that we've gone through, I mean, Iraq has been going through multiple wars and conflicts and so on, and so, occupation and so on and so forth, whether any lessons are being learned, and perhaps this is the last round of discussion around this for the speakers to come in and speak from their perspective. Where are we at? Do you feel that there is more awareness now, and there is hope, and there is a feeling that better understandings are coming through, and better projects that are reserving and conserving cultural heritage as well as sites, but also intangible heritage it is actually on the rise. So maybe we haven't heard from Mustafa. Mustafa, do you want to come in on this from an archaeological perspective?
Okay. If you see the region between the mixture between Tigris and Lower Zab, this is two rivers, you find a lot of archaeological ruins, a lot of things related with past history. The shepherd can find this, and the farmer can find like this, and we can't receive to our aims or our goals without educate from the primary school. And we have to share the experience with other countries to save our cultural heritage. Thank you.
So from your
and I think we need for another Hammurabi king.
From your perspective, Mustafa, because I know that you're also expert in ancient Iraqi languages, where do you see the work done on projects that are preserving but also acknowledging the richness of the history of Iraq in that sense is going?
If you talk about language, I'll give you a lot of examples. If you talk about the theoretical work, there's no benefit. I want practical things. It's practical things. If you see the reconstruction for the Muhammad al-Durri shrine, you'll be, I think the investor mock of us, because he cover all the building with bricks. Bricks, this is a standard material for rebuilt like this shrine. That's have a long time the history. I think here we face a lot of heritage, a lot of from our ancestors, a lot of word from the few related with this issue related with language. I'll mention a short story. When I was young with my grandfather, I supported him to sheep herd the sheep, and in the middle of night, when I want to go to my schools, he said he didn't read, he didn't written before. In Arabic language, we called ummi. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He told me we'll go with our sheep to the Zugdum. Zugdum. I didn't know what's the meaning of Zugdum. What's the Zugdum? My grandfather said it's the edge of mountain. When I joined to the cuneiform department, firstly, or ancient Iraqi language, I saw like this word in dictionary of Edzard, who didn't know my grandfather or any Iraqis one, just a little persons. Zuktum or Zukdum, it's the edge of mountain. This is our cultural heritage. We have to protect, we have to save, we have to educate from the primary school to the secondary school. But I agree with Mrs. Or Dr. Ghad and suggestion. Some of students in roommate in our hostels mock of me when I joined for archaeology, because you didn't get a chance to take a job in our country. You have to join another department. How we can learn like these students to preserve their identity? If you haven't archaeological or heritage, you have identity. You haven't identity. I think this is the main point. And from the first, I said we can't save our cultural heritage with armed people or with the walls, just by increase the awareness of society, by education, by give an exhibition, by booklets, by brochures, by manuals, by everything you can find, or any steps that encourage the people to preserve their cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I answer your question?
Yes.
I think after a year of frustration and conflicts, I think the young Iraqi architects, they are maybe willingly, by their own willings and how they feel now about their country, as we see in the revolution that happened last year in 2019 and October Revolution, the people now using cultural heritage and symbolism of their historic city as a symbolism of power, and how do they define their country now without this kind of division between the communities. They just try to find a unified ground to use it to unify their community. So now I think we have a good amount of social Facebook account that interested in heritage sites. They're having a good NGOs maybe, or non-governmental institution, or even volunteering groups of people who are taking tours to the historical architectural sites around Iraq, volunteering that, trying to raise the public awareness about the cultural and the historical area in their country. I think the new generation, because of the conflict that we are facing since 2003 and even since the 80s, I think we will have a new generation who are more aware about their backgrounds, and they will use their heritage as a good start to improve the community in terms of finding a unified identity. So it's really a continuity to preserve the heritage by mobilizing these terms and value in the futures.
Thank you. That's a great point as well, because I've been following and seeing quite a lot of, like you said, organized groups. Some of them are organized in an NGO or a charity, and others are just independent people who are doing quite a lot of activism in that area. So it's pretty much yeah, it's very good. It's excellent to see. Dr. Ali, do you have comment on this?
Yes, I think one of ideas maybe can help us in such situation is the community museum. I know it is not well known maybe for all. This a new type of a museum which should be out of the building of a museum and go to the community and see what are the traditions and everything, and also works with with us primary schools, with the kids in the schools, to train them, for example, about their identity, about their culture or traditions. I think that this will be also a good idea, because the community museum can be everywhere, in each, maybe in each village, in each town. It doesn't should, for example, have archaeological site or archaeological city. I think now engineer Nu'man, architect Nu'man now can mention this, because he said about this in Najaf. We have a museum in Najaf named متحف التراث النجفي, which means the Museum of Najaf Heritage. It was in the past, it is a khan, it is a building used by the British forces, and before that used by the pilgrims and so on. And now it can work a very good museum as a community museum, and for example gather those 4 communities I mentioned in my presentation. If you add something, Engineer Nu'man, I don't know.
Yes. Nu'man, would you like to come on to comment on this?
Unmute yourself, sorry.
Okay. Unmute yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed a little bit of the discussion just lately, because I got a telephone call. But nevertheless, I did write to Dr. Ali. I think there is, in terms of heritage, there is a planning dysfunction in Iraq. It's not just the planning process itself, but it is the implementation of planning. Just one example, for instance, if you do anything which is not allowed by planning, you can pay a penalty, but you are not allowed to pull it down, or you are not required to pull it down as long as you pay a penalty. And I think that is what people will do commercially. They do that. And the second thing, I think there is an educational dysfunction, which is what Dr. Ali was talking about. And that is, I've been to Khan Shelan Museum so many times, and I ask a lot of people, family, friends, and what have you, do they know there is a museum in Iraq, in Najaf? No, they don't. And I think there is a problem here. People talk about Iraq and the heritage, but they don't know what it means. And I think we need to start from elementary schools and from kindergartens, possibly, to teach them about heritage. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Very good point. Which, Dan, you also wanted to come in as with your background as an archaeologist. I'm sure you had something to comment on this.
Is very true. He got to the heart of the point.
We can't hear you very well.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes,
that's better. Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Nu'man just got to the heart of the point. We need the law. We need the law. If you build on without a permission, without the site being investigated prior to your building permission, it needs to be torn down, because Iraq, every square meter of Iraq, like Dr. Mustafa said, have archaeological sites in it. Iraq archaeologically is a virgin land. It needs to be protected by law. And that's why I said we needed the ministry, because then we could hold someone accountable for the mistakes that is done. What Dr. Ali mentioned as well, and Dr. Mustafa is very saddened by the reconstruction. I said to him, Khalil Wahed Yultom, it's not only there. Don't feel sorry because it happened because Iraq have a long history being in wars, under sanctions. So you cannot help but lose the edge. I know we are the first civilization. We are proud people, but you get tired. I mean, المصريين يقولوا ضربتين على الراس توجع. يعني إحنا we cannot get up before someone else knock us down. So even here in the UK, I mean the Hadrian Wall, you must know the Hadrian Wall. It's been reconstructed in the 70s using concrete, which damaged the wall. And it took lots of campaigning to stop it and recover it. So mistakes do happen. As long as we can work again, as long as we can campaign and get something off the ground, then we can start again and do it. And that's why I need people like Sana, like Ula, like Dr. Ali, to call, we galvanize all the academics internationally to call for a Ministry of Archaeology in Iraq. And the funds, where is Lami? I think she got disheartened by my comments. I'm so sorry. I don't mean anything against Iran, but I don't want us to lose our identity by copying someone else. We can do it ourselves. We don't need help to how to do things. We just need to stabilize our country, have our own security, and then we can do our own reconstruction. We don't need outside help. Sorry, that's all, Sana. Thank you so much for giving me.
I think she didn't mention the help. I think she was like looking towards examples, how they protected their
well, of course,
site.
example, East and West can help us. The other doctor, I can't remember his name, also mentioned Iran. Our situation is very sensitive. We need to just help each other and stand up again on our own 2 feet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wijdan. Any last comments by any of the presenters? Thank you, Wijdan. If you can turn your mic off, just so that we can have, thank you.
I think in terms of I think even when we have like a hard time, we will rise again. Baghdad, Iraq generally has faced many significant historical challenges and different kind of destruction in his long history. But we should believe in ourselves that we will rise again, because there is the people who are like feeling proud about their history, who are willing to change, who are doing that in the right way. It may take time, but I think it will happen by the end. So we just need a hope, and don't try to put ourselves like in this kind of environment that we lose it. It's never been again in this kind of building our community. We can do it if we are just believing ourselves and just control our states in the beginning, try to manage our safe environment. We need the people, to be honest, to protect the heritage site. If we just protected these heritage sites without protecting the people who are living in these communities, who are the main core of this community, what is the need of this location anymore? So the people's life is now important to sustain the cultural heritage for the future. So it's just to prioritize our maybe working by putting the people's safety and how to sustain safe environment, then rebuilding our communities and their heritage in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Dr. Ali?
My last sentence is we should never give up. We should continue speaking, continue writing, continue everything, because one day we will succeed. That's all.
Thank you. Dr. Mustafa? We can't hear you.
I am here.
Yeah.
Dr. Sana.
Now we can hear you.
The last comment, I think we have to fight well, or search well, save everything. Thank you for good webinar. I'm glad to meet you, Mrs. Sana. Thank you.
I think my last words is that I am indebted to all of you. This has been amazing, and it's such an important topic. We all are passionate about this. We all want to make the change, and I think, like Ola was saying, we have to start with the people first, and prioritize looking after the people, and the people will look after the place. So thank you all for your time, and that's it. So round of applause for everyone for excellent presentations, and thank you very much. It's been 2 hours. We've just gone over by 4 minutes, but thank you all for your time. Have a good evening all.
Thank you.
Thank you for reminding.
Thank you.